My own daughter stabbed me in the back for money. Her lies tore my family apart. And then she just vanished. Now she's begging for forgiveness, hiding some dark secret. My name's James Carter. I'm 45, and I live in a quiet suburb outside Atlanta, Georgia, where the houses are surrounded by greenery, and the morning air smells like fresh-cut grass and blooming magnolias. My life's like a bridge I build at work. Looks solid on the outside, but there's cracks hiding underneath. I'm a civil engineer, been with the same company for 2 decades, putting up bridges, schools, and skyscrapers that shape the city's skyline. My career's my pride, my anchor. I started with a pencil and a ruler in a stuffy office, and now I lead projects that define Atlanta's future. But behind all that success, there's a pain eating away at me, like rust on steel. I was married to Caitlin, my high school sweetheart, the girl I met at prom who laughed at my clumsy dancing. We got married at 22, full of dreams about a house, kids, and a long life together. We had 3 kids, Lindsey, who's 20 now, Ethan, who's 13, and Ava, who's 11. Our home in Peachtree was the American dream. White picket fence, big backyard, where the kids built sandcastles, and barbecues with neighbors where laughter carried on till midnight. I thought we had it all. A strong family, steady income, plans for a trip to Yellowstone when the kids got older. But I was blind. 5 years ago, Caitlin tore our world apart. I found out she was cheating on me with Bradley, some real estate hotshot whose companies were always in the local headlines. I stumbled across her messages on our laptop, love notes, plans for a future together, photos that made me sick. She didn't even deny it. She just said she wanted a new life with him, like our marriage was some disposable thing. I was crushed, but I decided to fight for the kids, for our home, for everything we'd built. I didn't know the worst was still coming. Caitlin didn't just leave. She used our daughter Lindsey to deliver a blow I still haven't recovered from. I always tried to be a good dad. I drove Lindsey to dance classes, stayed up with her when she was sick, built model airplanes with Ethan, read bedtime stories to Ava. I was at every one of her recitals, every one of Ethan's baseball games, every school event for Ava. But none of that seemed to matter. Caitlin convinced Lindsey I was a monster, and my daughter believed her over me. Now I live with that pain, like a shadow that follows me everywhere. The divorce with Caitlin was like a hurricane, wiping out everything I loved. When she filed, I was determined to protect our family. I wanted to keep our house, our savings, and above all, our kids. I didn't want them to suffer because of her affair. I offered a fair settlement, ready to compromise, but Caitlin refused. She knew she couldn't get alimony. Proof of her affair with Bradley was airtight. I had texts, photos, emails, hotel receipts. She couldn't fight that in court, and her lawyer knew it. So Caitlin went all in. She figured the only way to secure money was to get full custody of the kids and child support. Her biggest weapon was Lindsey, our oldest. In Georgia, courts listened to kids over 14 about custody, and Lindsey, who was 15, became her trump card. I don't know exactly how Caitlin did it, but I later found out she promised Lindsey a dream life, designer clothes, a new iPhone, a fancy school, trips to Europe, parties in Malibu, all the stuff Bradley's millions could buy. She painted a picture of luxury where I was the villain who ruined their happiness. On the day of the hearing, I sat in the courtroom, my heart pounding. My lawyer, an older guy with tired eyes, warned me Lindsey's testimony could tip the scales, but I didn't believe she'd turn on me. I looked at her, my little girl who used to hug me when I got home from work, who asked for help with algebra, who laughed at my dumb jokes. But when she stood to testify, her eyes were cold, like I was a stranger. She said I was aggressive, that I yelled at her, Ethan and Ava, that I scared them with my anger. She said she was afraid to stay with me, and that the younger kids would be better off with Caitlin. Every word was like a hammer to my soul. I felt the air leave my lungs, the world collapsing around me. I knew it was a lie. I never raised my voice at the kids, never was the monster she described. I looked at her, silently begging her to stop, but she kept going, her voice shaky but determined. My lawyer tried to object, but Lindsey's words, delivered with such pain, carried too much weight. The judge, a stern-faced woman, made her ruling. Caitlin got full custody, and I got supervised visits. I watched my family walk out of the courtroom, Caitlin's hand on Lindsey's shoulder, my daughter not even glancing back. In that moment, I felt like I'd lost not just my wife, but a piece of myself. Lindsey's betrayal hurt worse than Caitlin's affair. The first few months after the ruling were hell on earth. Me, a guy who'd spent his life trying to be the best dad, was stuck meeting Ethan and Ava in a depressing room at the social services office. The walls were gray, paint peeling, the floor covered in worn carpet that smelled like damp. There was a rickety table in the corner with a box of cheap toys, and behind it sat Mrs. Harris, a social worker with a tired look, scribbling notes. Ethan, who was 8, stared at me with worry, his big brown eyes searching for answers I didn't have. Ava, my little one, clung to my hand, her voice trembling as she asked why I couldn't take them home. I fought back tears to keep from scaring them, but inside, I was screaming. I tried to make those visits happy. I brought board games, colored pencils, their favorite books. We built towers with plastic blocks, drew silly monsters, told goofy stories about pirates and dragons. But Mrs. Harris's presence made everything feel fake. She'd ask questions that sounded like accusations. "How's work going, Mr. Carter? How are you managing your anger?" I'd clench my fists under the table, feeling rage boil inside, but I'd smile because I knew one wrong move could cost me even those pathetic hours. Every visit was like a test, like I had to prove I deserved to be their dad. Lindsey never showed up to the visits. She'd completely cut me out of her life. I called, texted, but my number was probably blocked. Once I sent her a letter with a photo of us eating ice cream in the park when she was 10. I begged her to talk, but the letter came back unopened. My parents, who'd always had my back, said Caitlin banned Lindsey from contacting them. Caitlin and Bradley built her a new world where I was the enemy, and they were her saviors. I felt like an exile, cut off from my own daughter. I lived for Ethan and Ava. After a year of humiliation, the court finally allowed unsupervised visits, but only on weekends. It was better than nothing, but it still felt unfair. I was a dad who wanted to be there every day, helping with homework, tucking them in, not some weekend guest. Every night, I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, asking myself, how could Lindsey do this? 5 years passed, but the pain didn't fade. It became part of me, like an old scar that aches in the rain. My weekends with Ethan and Ava were the only light in that darkness. We'd go to the park where Ethan learned to skateboard, catch new animated movies for Ava, bake pizza in my new place, a modest house, but warm, with a big window overlooking the garden. I tried to give them everything I could in the little time we had, but every time I dropped them back at Caitlin's, my heart broke. Their house, a massive mansion in an upscale Atlanta neighborhood with marble floors and a pool, was bought with Bradley's money, and I suspected my child support, which came out of my paycheck every month. Recently, things started shifting. During one of our weekends, Ethan, now a teenager with a serious look and earbuds he barely took out, mentioned that things weren't great at Caitlin and Bradley's. He said Lindsey, home from college for break, was fighting with her mom a lot. Ava, curled up on the couch with a bowl of popcorn, added that Lindsey seemed sad, locking herself in her room and crying. It was weird. I always thought Lindsey was Caitlin's favorite, her ally in the war against me. Why were they clashing now? Something in their perfect world was cracking. I tried not to dwell on it, but the kid's words stuck with me. I wondered, what's going on with Lindsey? Does she feel guilty for what she did? Or is this just some teenage drama? A few weeks later, I pulled up to Caitlin's mansion to pick up Ethan and Ava, parking my old pickup in the driveway. Usually the kids would rush out to avoid awkward run-ins with their mom or Bradley. But this time, the front door opened, and Lindsey stepped onto the porch. My heart stopped. She was pale, with dark circles under her eyes, her hair messy instead of its usual polished look. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. She walked toward my truck, her steps hesitant, like she was scared I'd drive off. I felt anger and pain flare up inside me. After 5 years of silence, my daughter, who betrayed me, wanted to talk. I didn't give her a chance. "I got nothing to say to you," I snapped, my voice colder than I meant. Her face crumpled, tears welling up. But I didn't wait. I started the engine and drove off, leaving her standing alone in the driveway, a small figure in the shadow of that huge house. Ethan and Ava were quiet the whole ride, their eyes glued to the windows. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Lindsey didn't give up. The next day, my phone blew up with her calls and texts. "Dad, please, let me explain. I know you hate me, but I need to tell you the truth." I stared at the screen, anger wrestling with curiosity. Hate? No. I didn't hate her. I loved her, despite everything, and that's why her betrayal cut so deep. Every message was like a jab at an old wound, but I couldn't delete them. I read them over and over, trying to figure out what she was after. A week later, I caved. Curiosity, mixed with a tiny, almost faded hope, won out. I agreed to meet, not because I forgave her, but because I wanted to hear what she had to say. Lindsey came to my house, my modest place with a wooden porch and a garden I planted to distract myself from the pain. She stood at the door, hands shaking, eyes red from crying. She didn't look like the confident girl who lied in court. She looked broken, almost scared. I let her in, but my voice was cold as a winter wind. She started talking, and her words turned everything I thought I knew upside down. She said Caitlin manipulated her. Her mom convinced her I was a selfish tyrant who ruined their family. Caitlin told her I forced her to give up her career for the kids, controlled her every move, didn't care about her dreams. She painted me as the villain, and Bradley as the hero who'd save them. Caitlin promised Lindsey a dream life, fancy parties, travel, an elite college, a closet full of designer clothes. All she had to do was back her mom in court. Lindsey, dazzled by the promises, bought it. I listened, feeling anger and pain clash inside me. I wanted to yell, to ask how she could believe that crap when she knew me her whole life. But I stayed quiet, letting her talk. Then she dropped a bombshell that took my breath away. She said Bradley, Caitlin's husband, went bankrupt. His business, which seemed so successful, collapsed under a mountain of debt. Lindsey, who'd dreamed of luxury, was trapped. No wealth, no trips, just arguments and tension in a house that felt like a cage. She started asking questions and reached out to my parents, who Caitlin had banned her from seeing after the divorce. They told her the truth. I tried to save our marriage. I loved her and Caitlin. I was never the monster her mom described. But that wasn't all. Lindsey looked me in the eyes, her voice shaking. "Dad, I know where Mom hid the money. The child support you paid. She didn't spend it on us. I saw documents. I can help you get it back, but I need your help." I froze. Money? Was she offering a deal? My mind spun. Was this genuine or another lie? Did she want to make things right? Or was she just trying to climb out of the financial mess her mom was in? Anger flared up again. I couldn't sleep after that meeting. Lindsey's image, standing at my door, her trembling voice, her tears, haunted me. I wanted to believe she'd changed, that her regret was real, but years of pain had made me cynical. What if this was another trick? What if Caitlin was still pulling the strings? I tossed and turned, staring at the shadows on the ceiling, remembering the old Lindsey, my little girl who giggled when I tossed her in the air, who drew me Father's Day cards. Where was that Lindsey? And who was this stranger begging for forgiveness? The next day, I got a surprise call from my sister Abby, who lives in Savannah. She rarely calls, but her voice was full of worry. She said Lindsey had reached out to her a few weeks ago, asking about the divorce. Abby was shocked since Lindsey hadn't talked to our family since Caitlin cut her off. Lindsey admitted she was starting to suspect Caitlin had lied to her, but there was more. Abby hinted that Lindsey was hiding something big, something she was scared to tell even me. She said she did something awful, James, Abby said, her voice shaky. She didn't go into details, but I think it's tied to the court. She's terrified you'll never forgive her if you find out. My heart sank. What else could Lindsey be hiding? I thanked Abby and hung up, but her words wouldn't leave me. I started to suspect Lindsey knew more than she was letting on. Maybe her lie in court wasn't just a teenager's mistake. Maybe it was something bigger. I decided I had to find out the truth, even if it broke my heart. I texted Lindsey, asking to meet again. She replied right away, agreeing to come over the weekend. But before that, I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator a co-worker recommended. I felt guilty spying on my own daughter, but I needed the truth. The PI promised to dig into her social media, her college circle, any ties to Caitlin and Bradley. I didn't know what to expect, but I braced for another hit. When Lindsey showed up that Saturday, I was on edge. She looked even more worn out than before, her eyes full of fear. We sat in the living room, and I cut to the chase. "What are you hiding, Lindsey?" "My sister said you're scared to tell me something big." Her face went pale, and she looked down. I felt my heart pounding, like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. After a long silence, she started talking. She confessed that her lie in court wasn't just because of Caitlin's promises. Bradley blackmailed her. When Lindsey was 14, she got in trouble at school, stole money from the school club's cash box to buy a new phone. Bradley found out through a friend who worked at the school and used it against her. He told her if she didn't back Caitlin in court, he'd tell everyone, including the police, and her life would be over. Lindsey, scared and confused, went along with it. I was stunned. My daughter wasn't just misled, she was coerced. But why didn't she tell me all these years? Why not come to me? She said she was afraid I wouldn't believe her, that I'd be disappointed. She also admitted Caitlin kept manipulating her even after the trial, threatening to tell me about the theft if Lindsey reached out. I felt rage toward Caitlin and Bradley surge inside me, but I was also crushed. My daughter had been suffering alone, and I couldn't protect her. Then Lindsey threw in another twist. She said she recently found proof that Bradley wasn't just bankrupt. He was hiding money in offshore accounts. She saw documents in Caitlin's office showing my child's support payments were funneled to those accounts. "I want to help you get that money back, Dad," she said, her voice trembling. "I want to fix what I broke." I stared at her, trying to gauge if I could trust her. Her words felt real, but the shadow of her past betrayal still loomed between us. I didn't know what to do. Lindsey sat there, her eyes pleading for forgiveness. But I was torn. For 5 years, I'd lived with the pain of her betrayal, the memory of her cold stare in court, her words that took Ethan and Ava from me. Now she's saying she was a victim, that she wants to make it right. But how could I believe her? What if this was another of Caitlin's games? What if Lindsey was still under her control? I told her I didn't want to get tangled up in her plans. I was done with courts, lies, and endless drama. All I wanted was more time with Ethan and Ava. I didn't need her rescue. Lindsey pushed back, her voice desperate. She wanted to sue Caitlin, expose her lies, give me back the years she stole. She spoke with such passion I almost believed her. But then, anger took over. I reminded her she'd known me her whole life. She saw me at every dance recital, heard me read her bedtime stories, went with me to Disneyland. Yet she chose lies for money, for fear of Bradley. Now she wants to play hero? I told her I didn't buy her remorse. If I wanted to change the custody deal, I'd do it myself, without her help. Her eyes filled with tears, her body shook, but I didn't back down. You broke our family, Lindsey, I said, my voice raw with pain. You think you can just waltz back and fix it? She stood, her shoulders slumped, and left without another word. The door closed, and the silence in the house was deafening. I sank onto the couch, hands over my face, feeling tears burn my eyes. I wanted to forgive her, but I couldn't. Not now. Maybe never. But that night, her words wouldn't leave me. She was scared, blackmailed, alone. I remembered her as a kid, running to me when she scraped her knee. Was I too harsh? Was she really different now? I didn't have answers, but I felt like I was at a crossroads where every path led to more pain. A few days later, my mom called, her voice thick with worry. She said Lindsey had come to her, crying, begging her to convince me to listen. My parents had always been in my corner. During the divorce, they tried to defend me, but the court brushed them off. Now they were saying Lindsey had changed. They said Caitlin was threatening to expose her if she went against her. They also hinted Lindsey had evidence that could flip the custody case. That got me thinking. What if Lindsey wasn't the traitor, but a victim? I remembered her as a teenager, how Caitlin was always her idol. Maybe I'd been too hard on her? I decided to give her a chance. I called and asked to talk again, but over video since she'd gone back to college in North Carolina. Our call was rough. I told her betrayal broke me. I couldn't wrap my head around how she believed Caitlin when she'd known me forever. She admitted she was blinded by her mom's promises, terrified of disappointing her. She said she'd do anything to fix her mistakes, even if it meant facing Caitlin in court. She repeated that she knew where the money was hidden and wanted to help me get it back. But then she added another twist. She said she wasn't just scared of Caitlin, she was terrified of Bradley. He'd threatened her if she told me the truth. He said he'd destroy me, Dad, she said, her voice shaking, and I saw fear in her eyes. Rage toward Bradley surged inside me. He didn't just wreck my marriage, he was terrorizing my daughter. I swore to myself he'd pay. I decided it was time to act. I called Caitlin and demanded we revisit the custody agreement. I told her I wanted joint custody of Ethan and Ava, and for her to return the child support she'd misused. As expected, she dodged, whining about her business and Bradley's debts. But I was ready. I told her Lindsey had spilled everything, and if she didn't agree to my terms, I'd sue, and Lindsey would testify against her. Caitlin freaked out. Her usual smug confidence vanished. She started accusing me of blackmail, her voice shaking with anger. You wouldn't dare, she hissed, but I could hear her fear. I told her I didn't care what she called it. I was done being her puppet. I gave her a week to think it over, warning her we'd see her in court if she didn't budge, and this time, the truth would be on my side. A few days later, Lindsey texted me. She'd found documents proving Caitlin was funneling child support to an account tied to Bradley's business. It was a shock. I always suspected she wasn't using the money for the kids, but now I had proof. It gave me a boost. I realized with Lindsey's help, I could not only get more time with my kids, but also get justice. But deep down, I was scared she'd betray me again. The week was almost up, and I decided to talk to Lindsey one more time. I wanted to make sure she was ready for what might come. She said she was, even if it meant losing her relationship with her mom. She admitted she knew about the lies back in court, but was too scared to stand up to Caitlin and Bradley. Now she wanted to make it right, even if it came with consequences. I have to do this, Dad, she said, her voice firm. I can't live with this guilt. When I called Caitlin, she was still stalling. She rambled about her business, Bradley's debts, how tough things were. But I didn't budge. I told her my lawyer was already drafting papers. So, what would you do in my shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments.